Neither one of you mentioned the Eagles as a stumbling block. Now, they have definitely...
Number 3, I have the Clemson Tigers. I think they're very overrated. You look at the ACC.
Okay.
They are extremely overrated.
Talk about that.
The ACC is terrible.
Okay.
I mean, you look at the teams there. You have Louisville, you have Florida State. Need I say more? I mean, the only ranked opponent that they have left on their schedule is Wake Forest. Let's be honest, Wake Forest's going to drop out that bad. Because, like I said earlier, Clemson plays nobody. I mean, they barely escaped UNC.
Alec, let's get you in on this. Where do you think Doncic and Porzingis rank overall?
I would put them in the top 5.
Okay.
Probably leaning towards number 5. I agree with the first two. Like Garrett said, I do have to think that Harden and Westbrook are just a scary thing.
What's the next step for the Cowboys? Do they move on from Jason Garrett, or does he need to keep the job?
I think you have to move on from Jason Garrett. He's been there since 2010, and he's only had 5 playoff games, and he's 2-3. Jerry has this track record of just sticking with his guy. If you look at Jason Garrett, he was a Cowboy back in the 90s, and Jerry Jones, he knows the Garrett family, and so I think in a way he doesn't want to admit that he's wrong and that this was a bad coaching hire. ESPN's radio host Will Cain said it perfectly. He said, the first thing Jerry Jones did was fire Tom Landry, but he stuck with Garrett for 10 years. I just don't understand how you can do that. In my opinion, this NFC East looks awful. I mean, it looks terrible. The fact that the Redskins won against a terrible Dolphins team, they're 1-5, and they actually still have a chance to win the division, that's pathetic. And I mean, even the Giants are now just a game out. So it's so hard to say at this point. I think the winner of this division is probably going to be 9-7 or 8-8. You look back at the Falcons a few years ago, they won their division at 7-9. And I think that's a very similar scenario that we're going to look at. I love Lincoln Riley as a coach. I think him coming to the Cowboys would be a way to make Dallas great again. I think that you have him in Dallas, it's just going to change everything, because that system that he has in Oklahoma is phenomenal. You look at the past 3 years, he's had what is going to be 3 Heisman quarterbacks, in my opinion. First of all, I think they have to move on. If they don't move on, I'm going to be extremely disappointed. I can't even tell you how disappointed I will be. But I'm very worried, because based on the track record that Kellen Moore has, he went from quarterback to quarterback coach to offensive coordinator. So the next step up is going to be head coach. I don't know that it does much. I mean, the Giants aren't, much of a feat, beating them. But it's always good to beat a divisional team. You saw the heat between those two teams last night. It seemed like Will Hernandez wanted to fight every single Dallas Cowboys defender. But my MVP for this game, a lot of people, there's different names floating around, but I got to go with Mr. Cuddles. This Cowboys offense, or the team in general, is almost like a lawnmower after a long winter, because it just doesn't start up. And you keep yanking that cord and it's not going to start. Changing the workout 30 minutes before I believe the high school was 40 miles away. That's just something that really shouldn't be done. Stephen A. Smith said that, scheduling with a high school is something that it takes time. You can't just show up and expect to be able to use the field. So he was saying that he thinks that Kaepernick knew probably Tuesday what he was going to do, that he was going to move it. It's really tough to say. I do think he does deserve that spot, but the question that you're going to have to bring up is he willing to be a backup? Because no matter where he goes, he's going to have to be a backup probably for half a season, because he's got to learn that system. And being out of the game for so long, you have to decide, if I'm, let's say, the Cincinnati Bengals, I have to decide, well, I'm sitting here at the first overall pick. Am I going to take somebody like Joe Burrow, who, he's going to give me probably 10 years, maybe even longer at quarterback, or am I going to take a chance on Kaepernick? We know he can play. He played in a Super Bowl. Are you going to take that chance where he might give you 3 years at most? And, if you're Mason Fine, you have to be extremely proud. UNT was the only school to offer him any spot on a football team, really. And he comes out 2-time CUSA Offensive Player of the Year. He was the first team for freshmen, and he's also first team 2 times in CUSA. So you got to be proud of yourself. You're always going to have those people that are going to look back on him like that. I compared him to Tony Romo because he just kind of struggled in those games. But, if you look at it, it really isn't his fault, because you can pin these bowl games on, well, last year there was injury. He was out, I believe, in the first quarter. And, you can look at this season. The defense has just been absolutely horrible. I'm going to say it's a loss only because of what you said. UAB has the #1 defense in the conference. You look at UNT, our defense is absolutely terrible. I think Mason Fine's going to have a great game, though. I think he's going to make UAB's defense not look like they're the #1 in the conference. But I think at the end of the day, you got to look at this defense, and they just tend to struggle.